Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, welcome back to NPTEL, the National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning. We are in the series of lectures entitled Cultural Studies. We have completed 2 modules already comprising 20 lectures, and I welcome you to module 3, which is entitled Sites of Cultural Studies. As always, let's do a recap. In module 2, which was entitled Key Concepts, we looked at a few foundational concepts, a few terms and ideas in the field of cultural studies, and you will remember that a few among them are subjectivity, identity, ideology, gender, representation, discourse, etc. We talked about each of these, though I must admit that it was done at an elementary level, since these lectures are being designed for students of engineering colleges, where the Humanities and Social Sciences are taught as elective subjects. Nevertheless, I hope these, even the discussion at this level would be helpful for all of us. We also saw that concepts are ideas which have a certain degree of abstraction, simply because we need the degree of abstraction or abstractness, if you will, so that we are able to apply these to various situations, contexts and cultural phenomena. We then went on to discuss gender, which is the post-feminist, more or less a post-feminist, post-structuralist idea or formulations on gender, and you will recall that we devoted 2 lectures to gender, and the last lecture on gender featured primarily the some of the formulations given to us by the queer theorist Judith Butler, in which, for instance, we saw that she talks about gender as being an illusion, okay, of an abiding gendered self, that there is actually nothing ontologically, a male or female or masculine or feminine. We are all the time in a state of performativity of gender roles and gender expectations. Then we also saw that Butler and theorists from the queer and post-feminist schools of thought also talk about multiple modes of femininity and masculinity, which are potentially enactable, where sex and gender are seen as being malleable, at least in principle. Okay? If not always in practice, there is always the potential of sex and gender being malleable or manipulable or changeable. Then we saw that some of the main contributions of Judith Butler have been that gender is performative, okay, meaning performance and role playing, and these performances through repetition and reiteration, okay, become established or instantiated in society, so that they seem natural, and these are often the results of sexual regimes or regime, again with the with the whole resonance of a rule. So, as if there are certain norms, sexuality is seen to be normative, at least at least in an overt sort of way, but Butler says that behind these normative practices are always, what she says, are potentially enactable gender roles. Then we saw that there is a shift from the older school, or what we call the traditional school of gender studies, which saw sex as simply a biological identity, okay, and then and now we move on to sex being seen as a regulatory ideal, okay, something that is normative, something that is a stylization. So, we saw that the sex gender binary was broken in the post-feminist and queer movements. Now, well, let us talk about what we are going to go, what is going to be with us for the next at least 9 to 10 lectures, and I have entitled this module Sites of Cultural Studies. By sites we mean, simply put, we can state it as a question, is it where does it happen? Okay? All these things that we have been talking about, representation, subjectivity, identity, gender, all these things, where are they played out? Okay? You will recall that we had said that at the level of concepts there is a certain abstract quality that is desirable while talking about concepts, but now we come to sites, or what we may call, please look at this slide, locations. Okay? Locations, where are all these things actually played out, where are all these things actually located. So, let us read from here. If cultural forces inform our everyday lives, where are these located? What are the sites? Okay? For instance, Butler says here that there is definitely a move from studying structures, okay, studying frameworks, studying models, studying abstractions, to what she says here, contingent sites of power and hegemony. Okay. So, there is a move in cultural studies from structure to contingent sites. We also have, interestingly, a journal entitled Sites, okay, Sites of Cultural Studies, which you, if you are interested, you may look up. So, what are we going to look at in module 3? In module 3, we are going to look at several sites, as it were, where culture happens, where culture, where all these concepts that we have learned may be applied, and among these, I will just mention a few of these. Among these are the body, okay, which is the topic of today's lesson, space, time, globalization, development, ethnicity, etc. So, we will be looking at quite a variety of sites where we can see all the we can see that where these concepts and whatever we have theorized, the theories we have talked about all this while may be applied. Okay. So, let us come to the first site, which is the body. The key source texts in this lecture, from where I will be giving you quotations, from where I will be from where I will be talking about the theorization of these sites, are again Danny Cavallero's Critical and Cultural Theory, Michel Foucault's important work Discipline and Punish, Mike Featherstone's edited book The Body, Social Process and Cultural Theory, Chris Barker's Cultural Studies Theory and Practice, a book that has been with us all this while, the Sage Handbook of Cultural Studies, also by Chris Barker, and Jana Savicki's Queering Foucault and the Subject of Feminism. Now, these are obviously, you realize, by no means the only books that you may consult, or even I may consult while talking about body, but for the purposes of our present lesson, let us look at these texts. Now, we all have a body. Okay, you know that the body is has been a subject of study since probably philosophy began. Okay, we are very familiar with Descartes, the French philosopher, with whom modern philosophy is supposed to have begun. Okay, Descartes' dualism, which you call Cartesian dualism, which is that the mind and the body are supposed to be in Descartes' schema to different substances or substrates that meet in the pineal gland. Today, of course, the paradigm is one of embodiment, where the mind body dualism receives less importance, okay, in theory and philosophy. Okay. Today is a philosophy of embodiment, where the mind emanates from the body, the brain. So, let us look at this. As some beginning points may say, embodiment affects perception and interpretation. Okay. Other schools of thought, the opposite school of thought may say that perception and interpretation have nothing to do with perception and interpretation. But today we, after brain studies, after neurosciences, etc. Okay, today we are back to materialist way of looking at perception and interpretation, where everything emanates from the brain, that which is a part of the body. So, embodiment affects perception and interpretation, and therefore, it affects identity and knowledge formation, encoding social values and changes. So, see, the body is here seen as well the prime vehicle for, through which it's not something, that was relegated always to a second level. For instance, in the binary of mind / body, okay, body is always the unprivileged term, okay. But in current philosophy, in current studies of cultural studies, we give body, say, the primary importance as a theorizing entity. Now, when we frame the body thus, okay, this way of framing the body establishes one fact, that bodies are related to, let us look at this, structures of power, okay, as well as desire, right. Now, looking at the body from this perspective also shows that structures of power and desire, they also lead to meaning formation and knowledge. The second way of theorizing the body is not simply framing the body or agreeing that the body is central to perception and interpretation, or that the body may be framed. The other way of looking at it is, please look at this, body image. So, let us look at this. The body as a cultural image is variable. The important point here is the body image that emerges in cultural studies is one that is variable. Okay, that is again like gender, like sex, the body, okay, this corporeal body, its cultural image is not static, it is fixed, it is flexible. Okay. The body image includes also the space which surrounds the body. Okay, it is not just the the border of your body, what is just outside of your body, okay, that is the space which surrounds the body, that is also important in our body image. And thirdly, any one individual is bound to produce different body images depending on the distance she places between herself or himself and other people. Okay, so, what did we learn from this point? A is that as a cultural image, okay, you may feel that you have a body of a certain kind, okay, which is your body, but as a cultural image, okay, as an entity in culture, body is variable. Why? For instance, it says here the body will also go beyond its physical margins and respond to, taken from the space which surrounds it. And second, even a single individual, okay, is bound to produce different body images depending also on how he or she places himself or herself not only to the surroundings, but also to other people. So, you see how there is a sophistication to thinking about the body here, which does not relegate the body to a second place. Okay, so, the word body of course comes is related to the Latin word root of corporeal or incorporation. Okay. And we see here in this slide that corporeality or incorporation, okay, is not an entity which is discrete. It's related, of course, it is related to human beings as being the vehicle of human beings, but it is also related to objects, ideas, political, cultural and economic structures, and we shall see in a way how. There is again an ensemble of ideological practices that organize diverse entities into cultural wholes in a bid to give a certain a certain illusion, as Butler would say, to cultural stability. We shall see now these are how these points apply specifically to the body. Now, the most important person perhaps here, okay, it would be quite safe to say in theorizing the body, has been the French philosopher who we have had occasion to talk about, whose works we have referred to in a couple of lectures before, and this is his idea of docile bodies, which many of you may be familiar with. Now, I am coming to him at this point via an essay by Yana Savitchky, Queering Foucault and the Subject of Feminism, where she refers to Foucault's important term biopower. Okay? Now, let us read this quotation. Foucault's term biopower refers to two interrelated forms of power associated with the emergence of the sciences of man and the institutions related to them. Now, biopower first is disciplinary power, which targets individual bodies and operates in the context of institutional practices such as hierarchical observation and examination. Okay? Power of different disciplines that began to be formed from the 17th century onwards. Okay, these are the powers of disciplines which at the same time have disciplinary power, that is power to discipline people and make them think about themselves, about others through the paradigms of the disciplines. So, first, disciplinary power targets individual bodies and operates in the context of this is important, institutional practices such as hierarchical observation and examination. B, the second, that is regulatory power, focuses on the species body and is inscribed in policies and the interventions governing the health and welfare of population. This is biopower. Okay? A, which is the disciplinary practices or the disciplinary power that emanates from disciplinary practices, and secondly the regulatory power which have to do, as we have seen here, through policies, okay, through health, ideas of health, through policies related to health, okay, and interventions by the government in a bid to ensure the welfare of the people. So, this is the power that inheres in any authority, okay, as far as the body is concerned, as far as biopower is concerned. Foucault says that the individual body, okay, the individual body, it is just an illusion when we think that our bodies are ours over which we have full control. Okay. He says, on the other hand, that the individual body is not something that is that belongs completely to an individual. It is, it says, a social instrument, okay, and it is a malleable, again malleable, changeable, manipulable and docile, this is an important word with Foucault, docile tool of productivity. Okay. So, we find here that the idea that we possess, so to speak, just because we are embodied, we are in a body or we are the body, it is still an illusion to think that we are in full possession of the body. Within this theorizing, the body is very much a social affair. Okay, it is a social entity, as it says, it's even a social instrument, right, which is manipulable and which is a docile tool of various kind of productive activities. In his very important book, Discipline and Punish, this is the shift that Foucault points to. Okay, the body is here seen as a target of punishment, through incarceration. When you refer to the prison systems, for instance, okay, the body becomes a target of punishment. In this is the way in which the body is a social instrument. Okay, instrument for productivity is also, the body is also also belongs to society. The body as a target of punishment through incarceration, and second here, the body is something to be prescribed. Okay, it is something to be prescribed and controlled through, look at this word, the normalizing techniques and discourses of the human sciences in the 19th century, right. Now, as the body as a target, as a direct target of punishment through prisons, through incarceration, okay, now becomes, right, now becomes a prescribed body. It's not a punished body, it becomes a prescribed body, a controlled body. So, so much so that you do not realize that there is a control here, that there is a prescription of how to go about our bodies, how to maintain, you know, the health of a body. What is health in the first place is something that is prescribed by what he calls here the normalizing techniques and discourses of the 19th century human sciences. You follow? So, again, what was an overt, a visible control, okay? Almost sometimes a violent control of the body, which always is a social instrument, okay, as Foucault has said, okay, not just in the 19th century. Now, there is a shift therefore from that sort of a very visible control to you know, control through prescription, control through how things ought to be, okay, through a prescriptive, through a normative, and through a controlling discourse, okay, which is again, as we seen in another slide, which is nothing but biopower. These are regulatory practices and disciplinary practices. This is an important core point in you know, the understanding of body in cultural studies, particularly through Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punish. Next, according to Foucault, discipline produces subjected and practiced bodies. Look at these practiced bodies, which may be called the docile bodies. We therefore, there are certain practice in the sense that these practices, right, these practices which he calls in the previous slide, which he calls you know, the normalizing techniques and discourses which prescribe what the body should be. These are practice bodies, bodies that come through practices, and at the same time, okay, the bodies that are practiced, so to speak, that are lived out, that are maintained through these discourses after having been informed by these discourses, and hence they are docile bodies. Why docile? They are docile because they already, as I said, this is what, subjected to discipline. This is a very beautiful way to put it here. Therefore, he says there is the creation of a new political anatomy, and you obviously will mark, you know, it rhymes with political economy, which is of course a much more common phrase in cultural studies and in economic and political social theory. But he says that this kind of you know, a regulatory, discursive, disciplinary way of understanding the, you know, the body gives rise to a new political anatomy. Anatomy, the body is kind of made political, okay, where issues of power over the body come in. That is why he says there is a new mechanics of power as far as the body is concerned. In a book on Michel Foucault by two well-known Foucault scholars, Herbert L. Dreyfus and Paul Rabino, they give us these points. They said how, now we've only talked about that there are practices, okay. There have been the creation of certain human sciences in the 19th century. Now, in this slide we get here the, you know, the actual way in which these have happened. A is something we have talked about, I think, in gender, which was the hysterization of women's bodies. Okay. Hysteria was seen as a condition that emanated from, you know, from the body, a mental condition that emanated from the body, which root was the body, and where women were seen particularly as suffering from hysteria as compared to men. And there were several techniques by which, you know, in the 19th century, by which hysteria was understood, and therefore the cure of hysteria was also based on such a gendered view of of the affliction, right. So, hysterization of women's bodies, this is the way the body, the female body was made docile, okay. The female body was made subjected to the discourse of medical science, to the discourse of hysteria. And of course, we know today that this is not the case. The entire way of tackling it and the entire way of even diagnosing it was wrong. But nevertheless, in the 19th century, women's bodies was made docile, were made docile and subjected, okay, through hysteria. Second, again, is it happened through the socialization of procreative behavior. Okay. Sexual behavior or activity that led to procreation was not simply or not a simple choice of two individuals. Okay. It was made, it was socialized, so to speak, that is a procreating body. The procreating body was socialized, again was made docile, okay, through certain prescriptive behaviors which the procreative body was supposed to follow. Okay. So, then next there was the psychiatrization of perverse pleasures, of so called sexual deviations, and people who were found to indulge in sexual deviations were appropriated by the discipline of psychiatry, okay, as in a bid to make or to normalize those practices, to bring them to a certain kind of understanding of normal practices. Okay. And fourth, to do also with the church, okay, was the discourse and technology of the confession, right. So, confessions about the body, confessions about certain indulgences with the body, okay. Confessions of not having practiced the regulated, monitored or accepted or prescribed way of behaving as far as the body was concerned. So, as Dreyfus and Rabineau have shown, these are some of the ways in which the 19th century human sciences appropriated the body. So, till now what have we seen? We have seen that the body, as which we may have understood as something that is ours, over something that is simply a complex organism which is completely biological, and where thinking and activities and economic production are social. Those binaries are gone here, and we are looking at particularly at this at this juncture, we are looking at the body as a social instrument, right. Then quickly look at an essay by Brian S. Turner in an edited book by Mike Featherson, the book being The Body, Social Process and Cultural Theory. There is an interesting point. He talks about the body in anthropology. Okay, anthropology is a study of man, anthropos is man, logy or logos is study of. Let us see how Turner shows what the body is in anthropology. In the philosophy of anthropology, the body was seen in relation to an ontology of man, okay, that there was something essential, right. It was seen as if it was something essential or an ontology, something that defined in an ontological way what man was. An embodiment and an ontology were related in this way of studying the body, and there was the relation between culture and nature. The point of disjunction, for instance, there was the end of indiscriminate sexuality, Darwinian thinking, sociobiology, and the centrality of culture to all aspects of being human. This was how the body was looked at in anthropology. Barker, in the Sage Dictionary of Cultural Studies, says this: the body is commonly understood to be the physical flesh and bones of an organism. However, within cultural studies, it is commonly argued that the body has been stylized and performed by the workings of culture, making the idea of the body as a pre-social, pre-cultural object impossible to sustain. Barker's words here summarize what we have done so far. Okay. Again, as I have already stated, the body was seen and understood to be simply flesh and bones, simply organic, okay. But we now understand the body is something that has been stylized, okay. Like gender, the body is also performed in culture. The body is performed not completely by us as agents. We perform the body, okay. We the body is stylized by us, but through the you could even say the injunctions of cultural prescriptions and practices. The body has been stylized and performed by the workings of culture, making the idea of the body as something that is pre-social, before social, okay, before entering the social realm. Thinking of the body as a pre-cultural object, it is impossible, it is most untenable today, given so many sophisticated theorizations. It is no longer possible in any way to look at the body as a pre-social, pre-cultural object. Therefore, we have in this schema the organic body, which you would say belongs to an older paradigm, okay, and the performed body, which is the new paradigm, right. The new paradigm today in philosophy and cultural studies, okay, the move therefore, the shift from the organic to the performed. Now, we see by now we have looked at several things. We have looked at the body in culture. We began with the body in culture. We talked about body image and the fact that the body image is not limited only to the margins or boundaries of the body. Okay. Then we looked at biopower as given by Foucault. We looked at the docile bodies, etc. Now, we come to a concept given by Chris Barker on what he calls body work. Okay. See how these concepts are worked out in actual in different arenas in this module on sites. Body work, in body work he includes, for instance, regimes of diet. Now, this is all to do with the body that is performed, okay, in a bid to show that the body is a performed body and that it is not a pre-social body, pre-cultural bodies. To all these points here show how culture impinges on the body, culture appropriates the body. For instance, regimes of diet, okay, prescribed diets for the what they call the desirable and the benchmark of what a fit body is to look like and feel like. Okay. So, we have regimes of diet. Again, as I would say all the time, look at the terminology used here, the regimes of diet. Okay. Then organ transplants, exercise, fashion, cosmetic surgery and health promotion strategies, which I would say is probably almost at its peak today. Okay, there are so many, again let us use Althusser's words, there are so many interpellations hailing out by different companies, okay, whether they are to do with diet, whether there's so many, whether they are to do with the proper exercise, that are to do with contemporary fashion and even the health promotion strategies. Okay. So, there is an increasing how should we put it, socialization, the increasing culturalization, if I may use the word, okay, of various domains that come into the appropriation of the body through culture, including the medical sciences. So, we do not simply look at medical sciences as objective sciences that are that have given truths. We also see them see such disciplines and domains as being together with cultural practices, with regimes of power, in an attempt to turn the body into a docile body, turn the body into a commodified body. Okay. A body work therefore, as Barker puts further, body work is to do with disciplinary power, disciplinary power which it tells us that there is there is a maintaining to be done, maintaining a desired state of embodiment. Okay? Disciplinary powers kind of lead us or show us the way to a certain desired standard of a body. And on the other hand, identity, okay, that is you also have your body identity to be transformed, by transforming the body through stylization. Look at these 2 points. A is maintaining, okay, a desired state of embodiment, including health, which is given to us by what? Given to us by the disciplinary paths through different different areas, different disciplines of study, which again try to discipline, so to speak, discipline the body. And secondly, again, as we saw here, there is also not simply maintaining a state of embodiment, there is also a process of transformation going on all the time, okay, in a bid to construct an identity of the body. The identity is done through transforming the body through stylization. And this transformation is not a one-off process. Okay? It is a process that will change as the regulatory practices change, as more and more information come in to us, say particularly through the medical sciences, the changes in the medical sciences, about the body. And on the other hand, the desired body that is given to us by both fashion and by serious disciplines, disciplinary practices and research, right. The body is seen, therefore, something that is both to be maintained and to be transformed. So, this is the shift, okay, in medicine, right, in medical sciences. The initial idea of the body as isolated, right, the body as an isolated sealed body today is seen as the body as something that is biopsycho or in a biopsychosocial environment. Okay. So, the sealed body is body simply as a container that is sort of today burst asunder by another you could say trope or another way of looking, concept of looking at the body as something that is biological, psychological, sociological and belongs to such an environment, right. So, hence this kind of opens up, right, an otherwise hitherto thought sealed body, isolated body to an environment that is full of knowledge about the biological, social and psychological ideas about the body. Therefore, there is a new disciplinary apparatus, right. There is an apparatus or there is a whole there is a whole climate, okay, about the body, the climate of opinion about the body, which changes very rapidly and which hails out to us to follow these to give us an idea, give us some illusion as if we are in we are in possession of the body of our bodies and we are in charge of our bodies, but the reality is that our bodies are being constantly made docile, subjected and disciplined by these these new disciplinary apparatuses. The previous disciplinary apparatuses, the older apparatuses we talked about were the apparatuses in the 19th century, okay, the beginning of different you could say different discourses in science and in the social sciences about the body. Today we have these new disciplinary apparatuses. These are, for instance, health promotion, advertisements on health promotion schemes, well-being, for instance, well-being things like spas and different the gym to which you go. Okay. So, they different health promotion schemes coming in from companies, from from various pharmaceutical companies. Then there is the medicalization of lifestyles. Okay. There is for instance, today you find so many companies, there is a whole plethora of choices as far as dietary supplements are concerned. Okay. There are various offerings, so to speak, in the market, and the discourse is very scientific. you will find the names of several, several desirable kind of components that are very clearly written there, and where through which is promised say different kinds of vitamins, for instance, different kinds of supplements. So, the lifestyle is also medicalized through these different offerings in the market. So, these new disciplinary approaches are not just health promotion schemes, the medicalization of lifestyles. Then also there is quite an aggressive marketing, okay, of these above things. The marketing is done through, as we all know, through media, through advertisements, through door-to-door sales. Okay. So, an aggressive marketing where you are no longer looking at the body as something that is pristine and only natural, this, as it says, the sealed isolated body. The body is now part of the currency, so to speak, part of the currency of the biopsychosocial environment. And finally, these new disciplinary apparatuses, they are not talking only about health. The fact that if you are a part of the in the circulation of these kind of commodities or these kind of activities or offerings, okay, of health promotion and a lifestyle that is increasingly being medicalized, right, to whether dietary supplements or even mainstream medicines, it is also important that your attitude, okay, depending on how much you partake of this, your attitude is also identified or it seems that your attitude is understood in your attitude to health, your attitude to life in general, right, your attitude to your biosocial environment is measured by the way by the extent to which you partake of these activities. And finally, this is also interestingly given a moral, it is given a moral shade, as if it is a moral imperative to be partakers of this kind of a new culture of the body, a new culture of the body where there are these newer forms of disciplinary practices and apparatuses, okay, that beckon to us. So, what we have seen is essentially in this lesson that the body is a site. Okay. The body is the first I would say and the most important site where culture establishes its power. In some of the lectures before, we had reminded ourselves from time to time that cultural studies is not a descriptive, okay, it's not a not an activity of description. We simply you describe things as they are. The most important I would say the most important component or aspect of cultural studies compared to other disciplines, okay, is this, that it seeks to, even as it explores a domain, say the body, okay, it seeks to not simply describe what is happening, okay, given the discourses of the body. It also has this political, it has this political aim of showing to us, okay, how power is deeply ingrained in this, how politics is deeply ingrained in this, how political economy, okay, is deeply ingrained in something seemingly different from the social, that which is the body. So, the body becomes a most social instrument, if you remember again the term, a social instrument, and there are different ways in which this is played out, and the latest of these is what is called the the new biopower, which comes to us in a new disciplinary set of disciplinary apparatuses about the body, where finally even this not just health, but also your attitude and your even your morality is sort of instantiated depending on how far you are partakers of these new schemes. Okay. So, let us then discuss some of these points by way of formulating some questions. For instance, if we ask this question, what is the function of framing the body? Okay. We saw that the body is in cultural studies the body is framed. So, what is the function of framing the body? The answer to this is, as we had discussed before, framing the body within culture, within society is important because it establishes two things, that is structures of power, okay, and desire. They finally lead to knowledge and meaning production, right. So, this is important because we are talking about the body as being ingrained in studies in structures of power, and the body as a desiring, okay, not just a perceiving element or perceiving vehicle or vehicle of interpretation, so as a vehicle of desire. Okay. These two things also create knowledge and meaning. Second, explain Michel Foucault's concept of docile bodies. According to Michel Foucault, our bodies are docile bodies through discourses, okay, where it may be explained in this way: the individual body is not the body of a person, okay, or is not a person. It is a social instrument and it is manipulable. Okay. It is manipulable for various productive and even reproductive activities. So, this is the important point here. It is made docile, it is made subjected, okay, to regulatory practices, and it no longer remains simply an organic entity. It is a social instrument, the body put in service of society. That is, there is a shift from the body as as a target of punishment through imprisonment, through incarceration, to a more covert disciplining or control of the body through discourse, through writing about the body. For instance, writing about the body, for instance, very importantly in Foucault's scheme, through the medical literature, the body to be prescribed and controlled through what he calls the normalizing techniques and discourses of 19th century human sciences. And as we saw, this leads to the creation of a new political anatomy, okay, which sees the body as deeply embedded in the mechanics of power. Okay. Then what is body work? If you get a question like what is body work, how are you going to tackle it, and you look at these 5 or 6 ways of describing body work as given to us by Chris Barker. Body work is work you do on the body, okay, through fashion, through regimes of diet, through cosmetic surgery in a bid to get the perfect body, okay, through very importantly exercises, through organ transplants, right, through organ transplants, and most importantly today I would say the health promotion strategies. So, we are and we see that all these things, I mean look at all these points here, exercise, fashion, cosmetics, so these are all to do including organ transplant. This is all to do with commerce, it's all to do with production and consumption. Okay. That is how the body is always already, as you may say, okay, beginning from when the baby is born, right. If you notice, what are the things that immediately the body the body becomes part or is appropriated by culture. Then cite a few examples of contemporary disciplinary apparatus that seek to regulate the body. These are, of course, the last point we discussed in the slides. The new disciplinary apparatuses that that through contemporary practices seek to kind of again convert our bodies in a new way into being docile bodies, are health promotion schemes, the medicalization of lifestyles, the marketing of the above, and not just our understanding of what the healthy body is, it seems that it's also the attitude of the being and the morality, okay, of the agent is seen. I mean, it is in the sense that if you are not healthy, you are immoral, Okay, you are not taking care of your body, particularly through body work, as we saw, particularly as to all the things that are being offered, okay, by these productive activities. It is as if if you are not, if you don't have the so called desired and perfect body, then you are could also be called an immoral person. So, see, from the body to identity to even moral questions. Do you follow? This is how the regulatory practices, this is how the commercial practices have a hold over us, and cultural studies tries to bring this to the fore, tries to point this out to you. Okay. My argument here would be, after looking at all this, is not that we realize this and then we kind of retreat from it. Okay. Definitely there are the respecting of the body, okay, the fact that we should respect our bodies, maintain definitely certain levels of health, of appearance as social beings, is to be definitely desired. But the important point that we learn from this is the very fact that we understand this making docile of the body, okay, is fact that at certain times we can decide for ourselves what is the level to which we take part in these schemes, or in these promotional schemes, or in this medicalization. There is no clear cut answer to this. Okay, it differs from individual to individual, but an important way of looking at, an important reason for looking at the body through cultural studies is this, that one doesn't, one is not so enmeshed. Okay. The body will always be social, the body will always be cultural, the body is always already appropriated, as I said, once the baby is born, right. So, one has to, this is an important word in cultural studies, as we know, negotiate, right, and these negotiations are obviously done in different levels and in different ways by people. Okay. So, thank you for being with me in this lecture or lesson on the body. In the next lecture, we are going to look at something which we don't probably think about so much, and this is, we are going to look at space, right. We are going to look, for instance, like in body, we saw the body, most of us see the body simply as an organic entity. Also with space, we look at the look at space as simply a geographical entity. So, we will see how space is also social, and in following that, in the lecture on time, which is the space is a site, time is also a site. Time is not something to do only with physics. Okay. Time, history, these are also it wouldn't be too much to say that these are also cultural and social constructs. Okay. So, I look forward to being with you in the next lecture on space. Thank you.